We know that, okay? But we have to be reminded not to worry, because some things can come up on us all of a sudden, and it can cause any of us to worry. Because remember, before this, we were talking about one of the first things we talked about in this study is the fact that it can happen to anybody. Okay? It can happen to anybody. It can happen to any of us. And so as we go through and we look at that, and he has there a commandment from a trusting individual. One of the reasons that we can take this command is because we can trust God. God is saying, you can trust me. Don't worry about that, because you can trust me. I will provide. I may not come when you want, he's saying to us, but he's always on time. Okay? How many times have we been in situations where it looked like trouble lingered more or longer than we ever thought it would? And sometimes we start off full of faith, but if God doesn't answer by 5 o'clock on Friday, there is that tendency to be distracted because of the amount of time. We can come unglued because of the amount of time. And God didn't tell us when he was coming, but he said he was coming. And we can trust him for that. So then tonight we go into that part C, an argument to understand. An argument to understand. And in that argument to understand, what we have there is we want to grasp godly, or they said it this way, just they use that LL, lordly logic. Okay, understanding what's in the mind of God when he makes a statement like this. What is God saying when he does this? Okay, what is that we need to learn when God makes these kinds of statements to us? The question behind the godly logic, okay, is what was in the mind of Christ when he said it? When God says, take no heed, take no thought for what you're going to eat and what you're going to drink and what you're going to put on. What's in his mind? What is in his mind? God, the one that said to Moses, take your rod, smote the rock. And when he did it, water came forth. What is it? And then more importantly, what is in the mind of God when he tells us not to worry? And he's the one who loved us so much that he gave his only begotten son. What is his mindset? Is God just saying, I might do it? No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying you can trust me. Okay? And then he's challenging us to look at his track record. If you really want to get an understanding of the mind of God, check out his track record. And don't just go all over the world looking at what he did for everybody else. What has he done for you? What has he done for you already? Okay? What ways has he made? What was in your face and you didn't see yourself getting beyond, and now it's in your rearview mirror? Okay? David, I believe, did something similar to that, and he walked away with, the Lord is my shepherd. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Let's look at this. Okay? So look here, what's in the logic? What's in the mind of God? 3 questions we need to consider. Do you believe that God gave you a great gift of life? And that he gave you a body to sustain it? Let's not run too fast. Do you believe that God gave you this life that you have? Okay. All the people in the world, we've lived long enough, and some of our friends are no longer with us. And we can't come up with a legitimate reason why we ought to be here and they're not. But God made it so. And the question is, if he did all of that, if he can do that, then can he handle the little stuff that we run into? Okay? Can't he handle that? He wants us to He's questioning us because he's trying to jar our thinking. Okay? Now, look at this thing. He says, do you believe that God gave you the great gift of life and that he gave you a body to sustain it? This idea of sustaining. In other words, did God just set you up to fail? I remember one of them times Israel cut up on God. And God said, that's it? I'm going to kill every last one of them. Right? And he was mad with them because they had stoned Moses. And Moses then turns around and becomes defense attorney and says, God, I can understand how you could feel that way. But just think about it. What's going to be your reputation if you kill everybody now? They're going to say you brought them out of Egypt, made sport of them, and when you got tired of dealing with them, you just killed everybody. God repented that he thought he would kill him. You with me? So what's in the mind of God as it relates to us? Okay? We are falling out because we haven't gotten the next big thing. He's still waking us up in the morning, still putting food on the table. And let me stop there for just a minute. You know, y'all something else. Y'all can enjoy a nice steak dinner. Y'all can do that with the best of them, right? Yeah, y'all can do that. But then 9 times out of 10, if you were to poll the room and ask the question, what's your favorite meal? Y'all got it in y'all head? It ain't steak dinner, is it? Give me some beans on Monday? Huh? See? Okay. And don't turn around on Sunday and throw some okra out there. Mustard greens. But you see what I'm saying? But if God can do that, then he can handle the big stuff. And that's what God's trying to get us to understand. He said, if I gave you life, I can sustain that life. Okay? I can sustain you. And he wants us to understand that. Now, sustaining you doesn't mean that you have what everybody else has. That's not the way it works. Okay? But then you find out that people who have a lot of time they are some of the most unhappy people in the world. You look at people look like they got everything they need and all of that stuff, and they are some of the most displeased people. You know why? Because they are not happy. Those things that you think are really supposed to make them happy, it ain't happening like that. It's not happening like that. But God says he promises, if I've given you life, I'm also going to give you what you need to sustain you. Okay? Now, John, I got to do this, bro. I got to tell on my own self. Okay? And I remember this so vividly. When we were growing up, Mama came home one day from work and she says, guess what we're going to have for dinner? What we going to have? We're going to have grits and eggs. And me and my sister jumping up and down. You know, sis, we were too young. We didn't look around and see that's all we had in the house. You hear what I'm saying? But he took care of us. I remember going to, living with my grandmother. Folks talk about they lived in this hall and on the campus and that hall. I lived at Brown Hall because that was my grandma's house. You with me? But here was the good thing about it. I knew even if I ran out of money, I could go all day. But I knew when I got home, there was going to be a meal on the table. Knew it. Get on the bus, catch the bus 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we got off the bus at 6:30 in the evening. Been gone all day long. But Brother Thomas, it was all right. Because all I had to do was get to the house. Go in the bathroom, wash my hands, grab a plate, and there was going to be something on the table. You with me? And so you start to learn what's really important. And what God says, not only did I give you life, but I can sustain. Okay? So I ain't got to worry. I don't have to wait till I get in the lanyard before I have joy. You with me? God, we have, because God is saying, I can sustain you. Second question, did you worry? Did your worry have anything to do with that gift? Most time not. In other words, what he's saying is, did what you were worrying for have anything to do? Is it going to make or break you? Okay? Can't get I'm not there yet. Prepare to grow. I can't get the next big thing on my list. Right? He's steadily waking me up in the morning. Steady starting me on my way. Okay? Still watching over. Okay? Still have those situations where if he didn't stop you, okay? Stop me back here and I'm frustrated because I can't get the way I'm trying to go. But then when I get up the road a little bit, there was an accident and I could have been caught up in that. Okay? So we got to put this thing in perspective. Okay? What does that little thing have to do with this gift of life? And am I going to lose that life because it's not there? I submit to you not. Question number 3. Is not life more important than food and the body more important than clothes? Certainly it is. Why? Because on the one hand, when we talk about food, again, we just said it, when we think about, those big things, most times it's that little stuff. Okay? My great uncle shared with me, he was a child of the Depression. And he said that what they would do is, grown folk they would plant the sugar cane on top of the mound. And then down in the valley, they would plant mustard greens. And they'd let it grow together. When harvest time came, they would take all them children and they would go out there and they would harvest the mustard greens first. Send them back to the house with the children. Children knew they had to wash them and clean them and all of that stuff. And grandma might say, and make sure it's done by the time I get home. And then they would go on and harvest the sugar cane. Our people were sharecroppers. Okay? All right? And so when the money was funding the change or strange, they still had something to eat. Okay? Now for some of y'all, I could change that up and start talking about flat bread, lost bread, molasses, fig preserves, and stuff like that. That them folk took out in the middle of the winter when times were hard. Okay? Okay? So then we got to go back and look at it. Here's what I want. But I made it with this stuff here. So he's provided our needs. And now he comes back to ask the question. Is that stuff really all that important? In the big scheme of things, does it really sustain life? Or is it just a want? Okay, because part of what happens, and some of the reasons we become anxious and we become depressed, because we are looking at other folk and we're looking at things. And in looking at things, we forget to count our blessings. We forget. So Jesus comes back to remind us and says, take no thought. Take no thought. Don't get caught up in that stuff. Okay? So now, we were talking about this lordly logic or this godly logic, right? And so what he says is take no thought. Don't get caught up in that stuff. Okay? Because that's not the main thing. And what is Jesus doing? Because what he's really doing is he's using a teaching technique. Okay? And what he's trying to get you to understand and to focus on is keep the big thing the big thing. Okay? The big thing is life. And God gave it to you. Okay? Right? And he says, if I can give you the big thing, don't you think I can take care of the little things? So then when he says to us, take no thought, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink or what you shall put on. Okay? When he's saying that, he's saying that's the little stuff. That's the little stuff. He said, but I gave you life. So the author of the book says to us, he makes the statement and he says, how much worry did you do when you were in the womb? How much worry did you do between conception and birth? And if we wanted to be honest, most of us would have to say none. And yet you were born. Okay? Y'all, I'm a Betsy baby. I was in the ninth ward on Flood Street when the levee broke in 1965. I'm somewhere between 2.5 and 3 months old. Okay? My mama told me, she said, at one point the streets were clear. Then there was a little water on the streets. Then there was some water that got up to the porch. So then they decided to all go across the street, go up in the house, and they went in the attic, and for 3 or 4 days they stayed up there. How much worrying did I do during that time? I'm 2.5 to 3 months old. Am I making any sense? And yet God brought me through. I say it to you, my people are sharecroppers. Somewhere around that same year, they moved out of the sugarcane field. Had a house, right, out in the country. So so once we got from out of the 9th ward, okay, they sent me and my sister to Vacherie. Okay? Don't worry about the little things, because I've already provided the big thing. So he's trying to get us to understand that. Why? Because a lot of time we get caught up on this insignificant stuff. And if I can't have it, then I become depressed. I become saddened. Why? Because I can't have it. I don't have it. And a lot of times it ain't that you can't have it, you just don't have it yet. Sometimes God doesn't give us things because he's got to prepare the ground for our blessing. Because he doesn't just want to give it to you and then take it away from you. He wants to set you up so that when he gives it to you, you can maintain. But even if he doesn't, remember, he says, if I've given you life, I can handle this other stuff. He wants us to understand that. Okay? So then, So then the question comes, is not life more important than food? And the body more important than raiment? I remember a lady was in church and she was giving her a testimony. And she called out the different fabrics. She talked about the different fabrics, you know. And she said, y'all getting all excited about silk and all this other stuff. And she said, but I need you to know that I've come from cotton sack to polyester. And that thing caught my attention. Again, y'all, I don't know a whole lot about all them fabric. I can't tell you all that stuff, but I understood what the lady was saying. And I'm sitting there trying to process in my mind the idea of wearing a cotton sack. He's trying to get us to understand. He said, God says, I've taken care of the big stuff. Don't you think I can handle that other stuff? Okay? So we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that in mind. So then we come into this technique of teaching. Okay? His teaching method here is presenting from a higher level to a higher value to a lower value. In other words, what God says, I'm going to show you what I can do so that you know everything beneath this, I can handle it. So when he says, I gave you life, okay? And he says, and I'm saying that to you so that you'll know that I can handle all this other stuff. Okay? When you think about the human life, it's a fragile, delicate balance. And we get comfortable in it to the point we think but it's really very fragile. You take things and things get out of sorts or levels of certain things. When you go to the doctor and they do your blood work, they give you 2-3 pages of stuff that they've tested for. And if you start taking that stuff it gets out of balance because everything's got a range to it. It gets out of range, you got a problem. And so what he's saying is, but I can give you life and I can sustain your life. And if I've done that, all this other little stuff, I can handle that. And he wants us to understand that. Okay? So he gives us the example. The higher value is life. Okay? The lower value, the lesser value things are food, drink, shelter, clothing. Okay? And he says, I'm going to go to the extreme. I gave you life so that you'll understand I can handle the rest of this. Okay? So often we go through things or we won't even try to because we don't see it in front of us. And all the while, God is saying to us, but I gave you life. The late E.V. Hill tells the story. He said, I wasn't raised by my mother, I was raised by Mama. Mama was a lady that came by, saw my mama struggling with her children, and went to her and said, let me take that boy into the country and feed him and take care of it. He goes out into the country, wherever, I can't remember the cities and all that stuff, but he goes out there and him and his mama work together in the fields. And so when he gets to be 8 years old, and most times at that time, children went to work, especially boys. So she had a dinner for him. And so the people just know that she's about to let him go to work. And she announces Ed's going to high school. People come to her and say, let that boy go to work. You've been taking care of him. Let him take care of you now. So he's going to high school. So he goes to high school. They're struggling. But he goes to high school. He finishes high school. He's the only graduate that year at the little school that he was at. They had another dinner. Okay? Everybody knows now I know you're going to let that boy go to work now. At the dinner, she announces, Ed's going to college. What? We done struggled with you all this time? And he going to college. And so when the time comes, she gets him together, gives him a suitcase, gave him a couple of dollars and put him on the train. Gets on the train, gets him a little something to eat on the way. And so by the time he gets to Prairie View College, he says he has something like $1.80. He goes to register for school. He goes into the bursar's office to pay the bill. And at that time, the tuition is $80. He's got $1.80. He says he gets in line. It says Satan said to him, "You worse than your mama." He stayed there because when he left, last thing his mama told him, "I'm going to be praying for you." And them words kept him in line. And just about the time he got to the front of the line, as he was about to move up, and they're about to tell him, assess him what he needs to pay, a man touched him on the shoulder. "Are you Ed Hill?" "Yes, I am." "Are you Edward Victor Hill from Sweet Home or wherever it was?" "Yes, I am." And the man said, "Have you paid your tuition?" And E.V. Hill said, "Not yet." And he says, Good, because we won't have to go through the trouble of trying to reimburse you." The president knew his principal, and his principal made a call, and he had a full scholarship. You see what I'm saying? God says, I can take care of that little stuff. If he would never have gone, if he wouldn't have gotten in line, he would have missed the provision of God. So often we want to see it, but God says, I gave you life. And so when I understand that, my anxiety level goes down. When I can stay focused on the fact that God is my provider, my anxiety level goes down. Notice what I'm saying? It goes down, which means it had been up. Okay? Why? Because it can happen to any of us. But when I focus on the fact that everything I've ever had, he gave it to me, my anxiety level goes down, my stress level goes down, my depression goes down. Because I realize that the one that gave me everything is still on the job. Okay? So he says, so what he's doing is he's using a teaching technique. Okay? He's going from the greater. He's saying if I can handle the greater, he says I can handle anything else beneath that. Okay? He's giving you the great gift. Question comes, will God give us life and not give us what we need to sustain that life? Okay? Would he give us that greater gift and not give us the lesser gifts to go along with it? When you think about creation, it talks about the great lights and the lesser lights. In other words, God hung the sun, but he didn't just do the sun, hang the sun. He hung the sun, the moon, and the stars. I love the way it says in the first chapter of Genesis. He says, the greater light to rule by day and the lesser light to rule by night. God says, I can handle all of it. He wants us to understand that. So then, God gave us things to sustain us in this life. Let's go over to Romans 8:32. Romans 8:32. Oh, okay. Now, here's that great gift. He that spareth not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? He's already taken care of the big stuff. And if he can handle the big stuff, he can handle the lesser. He can handle the smaller stuff. And again, the more I digest that, the more I meditate on that, the more my anxiety, my stress, my depression, my sadness begins to go away. Am I making any sense? Okay? So he wants us to understand that. If God gave us life, that greater gift, surely he can be trusted to sustain us with the basics of life for as long as we live. Let's look at Job 14:5. Job 14:5. All right? Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bonds that he cannot pass. What he's saying is that the time that has been given to us for life is set. Okay? All right? The old folks say it this way: this world ain't our home. But while we are here, the master says, I can handle whatever you have to deal with. I can provide for you in this life. Okay? And then, of course, when that time comes, when he takes us out of this world, or as the old folks would say, when this world can't afford me a home no longer, he can receive us unto himself. He can receive us unto himself. So now let's move on to some illustrations. Illustrations that explain the idea that he's talking about right now. God gave Israel liberation from Egypt. That's the greater gift. Okay? God gave the other gifts to make the liberation successful, the lesser gifts. So I want to go to Exodus 14:30 and 31. Okay. All right. Look what we have here. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. Okay? And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. In other words, God tells Moses, stretch out your rod. He sends the east wind. He parts the Red Sea. They march across on dry ground. Egypt tries to follow them, and they are drowned in the Red Sea. And this 30th and 31st verse really records what happened in the aftermath of all of that. There's bodies sprawled upon the shore of the Red Sea. God can handle our situations. He can handle that. But not only he doesn't just do that. But I want y'all to go with me into chapter 15. I think I'm in the right place. Yeah, 15. I want to go down to the end of the chapter. I want to go down to verse 23. Look at what it says there. Exodus 15:23. And he says, and when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of that place was called Marah. Before you go to the next verse, the word Marah means bitter. Okay? So after coming through the Red Sea, after being liberated or set free from 400 years of bondage, they go to a city and the water is bitter. Okay? I got a problem. Now, some people would say, Lord, after all we done been through, after all we done gone through, now we've got to deal with this situation. Okay? And sometimes, y'all, we quit too quick. Because if you read on in the story, can we go to verse 24? He says, and the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? Now, he just brought them through the Red Sea. He dried up the ground, the seabed. And now you worry about what you're going to drink. 25 says, and he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord shewed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. I'm not saying to us we never have any bitter situations, but God has a way. He can speak to our situation, and he can make our bitter places sweet. So then it's not, well, how much stuff do I have to go through? It's always, if it ain't one thing, it's something else. No, it's God keeps right on doing great things for us. He keeps on making a way. That's a change in mindset. That's a change in mindset. Why? Because we've got to remember that God can make a way. Okay? Let's take verse 26. Exodus 15:26. Okay? Look at what God says. And said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to the commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. Okay? In other words, God said, you've seen what I did with Egypt. 10 plagues that went up against the 10 gods, so-called gods of Egypt. And each time he carried out a plague, it flew in the face of one of Israel's gods. Okay? And God says, now, first of all, if you stay with me, you'll never have to worry about me allowing one of those plagues to come up against you. He makes the promise. Okay? And we've got to be careful today, y'all, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this world today. And the world is shaking its proverbial finger at God. I do what I want. I do what seemeth right to me. When you look at a verse like that, and God is giving you a condition, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, you'll never have to worry about me. Long as you keep what I'm telling you to do. Okay? And a lot of stuff that we see going on in our world today is really about us just having our way. Folks just want to have their way and be accepted. After all these folks keep going in these schools and killing these babies, and they're still so hard-hearted that they still don't want to change legislation as it relates to gun laws. Okay? And so we've got to be careful with that. Why? Because God has already given us, he's given us his word. And it's covenant language. And what God says is, you keep up your end of the bargain, and you'll never have to worry about me keeping up my end. And y'all, and I'm paraphrasing, we're not keeping up our end of the bargain as people in general. So then look what happens. So then God comes along again. He's already in this passage, 23 through 26. What God does is God shows them what it's like to have a relationship with him. Okay? Then he comes back again. After he makes this powerful statement in verse 26, he goes into verse 27, and it says, it's a narrative statement. He says, and they came to Elim. Okay? Where were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. First, he gives them the principle. Then he gives them an example of what happens when the principle works right. Okay? They're in Elim. They're in a place where there are 12 wells of water. So there's 12 wells. There is abundance. There's enough for everybody. There are 70 palm trees. Palm trees, the branches, the palm tree is a symbol of peace. So in God's economy, when we follow his will and way, we end up in a peaceful place, a place where there are provisions. Okay? And that's why he's saying to us, you don't have to worry. Just make sure you stay in line and in step with God. Because if we do that, then we'll never have to worry about him not providing for us. We never have to worry about that. Okay? So he gives the principles. Okay? Gives us the principles. So then he says, and so here's, I have on your handout the idea of us versus you, us and you. Okay? We say us and you because sometimes, y'all, we see God dealing in the crowd, but we don't see him dealing in the individual. We can see God blessing somebody else, but we can't always see him blessing us. I can see him doing that for you, but will he do it for me? I really don't know. We can encourage other people. Man, the Lord will make a way somehow. Don't give up. He's going to do it. But then when our time comes, I really don't know. No, he doesn't just deal with us, but he also deals with you. See the principle? Okay? He also deals with you. So here comes the statement. Okay? God will take care of us, but he will also take care of you. Our worry has given us nothing. In other words, worry doesn't produce anything. It doesn't produce anything. Okay? God has given us everything that, and I'm sorry, y'all, I was a little dialed in. Everything that God has given us everything that us have. He's given you everything that you have. He's provided for us. God gives us the lesser gifts to help to sustain us, sustain the greater gift. He gave us life. Now he's giving us some things to help sustain that life. Okay? Doesn't mean I'm going to get everything I ask for, because sometimes God says no because he knows it's not good for us. Okay? When we were growing up and they wanted to teach us about giving, they said, here's $1. I want you to take a dime and give it to the Lord. We had no problem with that dime. Okay? Got $10. Here's your $1. But when that money started coming up, we start coming up with excuses. And what are we doing? We're not maintaining the covenant. And we want God to just keep on doing for us, even though we don't do right by him. But when we do it right, then we have the assurance that he's going to maintain his end of the bargain. Okay? Y'all, sometime I'm telling you, I'm at a point I'm scared not to do right by him. Okay? I'm running over, but let me pull in right here. Okay? God promises to meet our needs. And that's why I tell you we're going to get back to this. God promises to meet our needs. So David said, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Okay? He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Okay? Gives me a place to lay my head. Okay? That's a provision. Okay? That's a need. And then when I think about that, I go all the way back to Jacob when he's going to Laban's house. And he lays his head on a rock and goes to sleep. Okay? He prepares a place for me just to lay my head. Okay? Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pasture. He leadeth me beside the still waters. That's addressing a need. Right? He restoreth my soul. Okay? So he's going to deal with me in terms of my mental health. Doesn't mean I never have a problem, but he restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. If I want to follow him, he will make it possible for me to do right. And we run into this one. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Hold on. Yea, though I walk, I'm going to run into some valley situations. The valley is really a gorge. And the thing about the identifying mark about a gorge is that the walls of the gorge are almost vertical. Okay? And when you walk down in the gorge, it's one of the best places for your enemies to destroy you. They can throw rocks, they can hurl arrows, they can do all of that stuff from on top of the mountain. And you have almost nowhere to go to escape. It's one of the best places for the enemy to destroy you, but he says, even though I'm there, his rod and his staff will comfort me. Okay? Let's go on to verse 5. He says, thou preparest a table before me. Sound like food. Okay? In the presence of mine enemies. Now, here's what stop that. Y'all, the computer done caught me saying something and it picked up nice talking back to me. All right. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Okay? If we live long enough, all of us going to have enemies. And folks get mad with you for some of the simplest, most insignificant things you ever want to run across. Okay? And then some people are in positions where they feel like they will use their authority to block you from getting what God has for you. But God says, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. I mean, they can try to stop you. They might even slow you down at best. But what God has for you is yours. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Nobody can take it from you. That's right. Why? Because it's a provision from him. More than the people or others, whomever it may be. Even Satan himself. Because even when you read the Job account, God always put limitations on how far he could go. Even when he allowed him to attack him. But don't touch him. Don't take his life. Because that belongs to me. You see what I'm saying? Let's go to the next one. We're going to wrap up right here in this verse. All right. Look what he says. I think we're in verse 6. Look what he said. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Goodness and mercy. Now, what's mercy? Unmerited favor. So that's what you were going to say. God's grace. Okay. So now look what happens here. He says that he has some mercy. Because the truth of the matter is there are some things that God gives us that we don't deserve. Okay? Unmerited, unearned favor. Okay? And if we care to be honest with ourselves, there have been times when we've looked at situations that God done something for us, blew our mind, and in our own healthy sense of understanding, if we didn't say it to nobody else, we had to admit to ourselves, now you know I don't deserve this. Unmerited favor. Okay? Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Reverend Minister Lionel Johnson was preaching one night, and he was preaching this text, and he says, and he talked about the fact that this idea of surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. He used the example, he said, it's like what happens when a bird of prey is in pursuit of an animal. In other words, God gonna keep on pursuing until he accomplishes what he wants to in our lives. Because there are some things that he is pursuing us for, that he wants to give to us. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And when that's all over, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God says I can handle it. Because I gave you the big gift, I'm also provide the lesser gifts. I don't need to stay up at night worrying when he's already promised. And so every now and then I need to be reminded of this. Because so often we can get caught up in what's going on around us and in this world and in this life that we forget what God has already promised. Am I making any sense? Amen. Amen. With that, we're going to end with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we come now this day. We are so grateful to you. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your favor upon our lives. Thank you, God, for the many ways in which you've come and you've dealt with us and you've helped us and you've given us what we needed. Thank you, Master. Be with us now. Keep us in your keeping care and keep us mindful that you are the one that provides all things. And Father, may we never forget to say thank you for the things that you do. Be with us now, God. I thank you for each and every soul that's represented here tonight. And I ask God for traveling grace for all of us. Be with us and keep us in your keeping care. In the precious name of Jesus, we ask it all. Amen and thank God. Amen.